Hey, welcome to Refocus Radio. We are here once again, and today, man, we have another amazing show. We're going to talk to Amy Siegfried. She is doing amazing things. She's not just doing TED Talks. She's just not doing random things, man. She's doing amazing things. She's worked with the MLB. She's done amazing work, and she's someone that we're going to talk to about her show. She does talk sports. She does amazing things with her podcast, Last Night's Game. First and foremost, I just want to welcome Amy to the show. How you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
So, like I said in the intro, you're no stranger to speaking engagements and doing big things. You're an entrepreneur. So, we're going to touch on women in business as well. First and foremost, give the audience a little backstory. What made you so inspired and just excited about sports?
Well, it's actually a really funny story because I was a terrible athlete. I played one season of soccer at about age 12 and was kicked in the face, and I cried. And so I actually was a terrible athlete and did not participate in athletics at all as a child. My brother, on the other hand, played every sport that you could certainly imagine. And so I attended all those things. So I really learned to love sports because of him. And he's actually my co founder. I had no choice but to sit and learn. And so that really came in handy as I continued through life. And then when I applied for my first job as an intern at the Arizona Diamondbacks, that was really what kind of gave me that onus. I mean, that I knew enough about baseball and knew enough about what was happening in the world to join into that. And then obviously when you start working for a team and spend the first 7 or 8 years of your career doing so, you learn to dive in a little bit further about sports and realize what an advantage knowing about sports is for a female in the workplace or in the world, really.
And so, touch on your experience with the MLB because what was it like? I mean, give us the whole juice, man.
It was a lot of work. That's what I will tell you, that I don't think you see behind the scenes, especially working in baseball that has so many games and so many home games, is you are really hustling all the time. It's a very long season. They're very long days. And so that, I think, is behind the scenes. We all love football season. We all love baseball season, whatever that might be. But on the back end, just the coordination, you think about all the things that have to happen in order to make those games happen. I would say that is like the biggest thing I think behind the scenes that people don't think of. Also, the players are normal humans. They're very talented at what they do, but they're normal humans. They're dads, they're brothers, they're sons. And so I think that is one thing that even my parents learned to appreciate from me working for the team, is that these guys had, and these athletes all have these amazing talents, but it doesn't make them any different. They still have some of the same challenges you and I have. They have to work on their kids' birthdays. They're going to miss weddings and graduations. And so these are all things that they deal with too, that make them just human. We're seeing this with Tom Brady, right? There's things going on in his life, and it's maybe not his best season, probably because there's stuff happening that I'm not going to speculate on, but we really do look at that, and they are really first and foremost a human being that just happens to have exceptional talent.
And when you were working with Arizona Diamondbacks, what was it like being to see other people around, as far as like other media people and other staff? What was the culture like, and were you able to learn quickly on your feet?
You have to. You really have to. And as I mentioned, I started as an intern and worked my way up through our department, and I was always just willing to. I just said yes to whatever. You want me to drag a dolly around the stadium in heels? I'll do it. Whatever you want me to do, I'm in. And so, what you have to really all pitch in together. It has to be teamwork on the other side of it. And you really are, in a sense, family, because you are spending so much time at the stadium that you don't get to hang out with your family. And so at that point, luckily, I was young enough. I didn't have one to, a family of my own, I should say, besides my parents. But it was one of those that you truly had to become family. You had to work together. It was so important because there are so many moving pieces to this cog of this wheel that is this team, that you really do all have to work together and have good relationships, and respect. A huge piece of that is the respect of those around you.
And once again, listen to I'm Focus Radio, talking to Amy Siegfried. And I'm glad we took time to talk about MLB because I think that's pretty awesome. I mean, I used to watch a little bit of MLB growing up, so Detroit Tigers, shout out to them. Can't say the last time they won World Series, but I can say it was fun watching them. when you
Exactly.
when you started your podcast, last night's game, it's a big deal. I mean, I went to the website. It doesn't look like you just started on social media, profiles. You have a nice, laid out, well thought out website, and you have some awesome episodes. What was the inspiration behind that? What makes you say, you know what, I want to cover this in a different way?
Well, so last night's game itself started back when I was an intern, and I had one of my girlfriends at a game with me, and the guys are running off the field, and she says, "Why are they running off the field?" And I said, "They have 3 outs." And she said, "What's an out?" And I realized that she was missing this advantage that I had in the workplace to level the playing field, to be able to jump into that conversation, to have those conversation starters that are so easy. And sports is something you can talk to just about anyone about. And it's a great way to foray into food or travel or whatever else you might be comfortable with. And so I realized she was missing that. So that's where the idea for last night's game came from. It took about 10 or 13 years later for that to actually be executed. So we started last night's game, which is a tri-weekly email publication. We also have our podcast, Sports Curious, as well as you've seen, reader-driven content on our website. So the whole idea of how we cover sports at that human interest side of sports. There is so much more to a game than what's happening on the field in terms of the box score. And no one talks like a box score, right? If we're going to talk about sports, we talk about the Tigers. I might say, well, what were your favorite memories? Where did you like to go beforehand? Did you have a favorite player? You can handle all of those, but that has nothing to do with when did the Detroit Tigers win the World Series last? No, like that's not something how you and I really probably talk. Or did you see that so and so had an ERA of XYZ? No, that's not how we talk. And so we're talking about the human interest side of sports, and that's how we cover it. I kind of say it's like a mix of celebrity gossip and sports because it's something that I try to make that intriguing and make it a concept that everyone understands, right? Current events, but also factoring in a little bit of sports on the side just to make it a connection.
Hey, I do have to ask this because I know you are into all sports, but is there a favorite sport that you like to cover?
That's a really good, I would say, well, I'm excited about the World Cup coming up. But I would say, I think that football is kind of that. The reason I like to cover football is I enjoy football, obviously, but I think our country gets so excited about college football and the NFL season that is something that is talked about out and about in your community. And so to me, that's why I like it, because I think there's an opportunity to really allow our readers and our listeners to engage. But we also cover we just did a podcast on pickleball because everyone seems to be playing pickleball these days. I have not tried it yet, but these are things that people are seeing, they're hearing. I've had people reach out and said, can you do something about lacrosse? So we did something on lacrosse. And because I think there's that whole factor is, how do I give you all the things in your tool belt? How do I arm you with all the things so you are prepared? And when you come to our site and say, okay, I'm looking for something on pickleball, you can find that, or lacrosse, or if you want to know how to talk during what's going on this NBA season, which I look forward to. Those are all things that I want you to be prepared for.
And on your website as well, you have a guy named Scott. He's not just a random person, man. Share with the audience who is Scott and how he plays a role with this project as well.
So Scott is my brother, but he's also my co-founder. And he's really, like I said, the reason that I know what I know about sports. And he is still that guy that I text the questions about, like, what just happened? Why did this happen? What was that flag for? What does this penalty mean? And so he is that person that I still rely on for so many questions and all this sports knowledge. And he is his unofficial title is sports nerd, because he's that guy who just knows so much. And he really provides me with a lot of the sports content, and I'm the writer and the put the structure around it, if you will. But he really is that smart dude out there doing that. And it's been really fun to work together as his siblings. I think people are always curious what that is like to work with your sibling. And I really enjoy it. I think there's a lot of great things to watch. I've watched him grow in so many different roles, and and embrace things. And he's our idea guy too. He has some really phenomenal ideas. He's the one who came up with our merchandise store on our website. And so that's just really the fun part about working together is enjoying seeing the brains work together.
And speaking of brains working together, you also are going for your MBA.
I
So
am.
you're really hitting those books and working the show and doing all these great things. So first and foremost, congrats on that. What are you
Thank you.
studying? And two, how you keep that balance, man, from doing that and doing the show?
I've been done for just a little bit now, and it's one of those things that you look back and you think, how the heck did I ever do that? It was, my son was 1.5 when I started the program, and it was remote, or it was on site, but out of state. So I flew out of state every other weekend for my MBA, the MBA program. Chicago, Notre Dame has a Chicago campus. So I flew to Chicago every weekend for that. And I realized there were things I was lacking in, and I felt like I was inept when it came to being a founder, being an investor. I really wanted to learn those things. And that was really the big way to go back and do it, was bust your butt and go back to school. So the balance, I would say, it wasn't perfect. I had a lot of very, very short, I should say, I don't even know how to say that rightly. But I had some very, very lack of sleep. There was a lot of that. I would go to bed at midnight, 1 o'clock, and then get up usually before everybody else at around 5 and try to figure out how to get all the things done. I was telling someone the other day that I have this vivid memory of, it was Saturday night, and Saturday Night Live comes on. That's 10:30 our time. And I'm like, all right, honey, well, if you're going to go to bed, could you just pour me a glass of wine and leave it on the counter in the kitchen? I'm going to go take a final at 10:30 at night. I'll be done around midnight. And so if you're still awake, great. If not, I'll just take this drink and sit on the couch and unwind. So you just figure it out. I have a really supportive husband who's fantastic, and I have a great kid. And luckily he was little enough that he didn't really know a lot. He didn't notice I was gone all the time. So, and it also fell during COVID, where my husband wasn't traveling for work. And so we didn't have to juggle who's going to take care of our kid, who's grandma here, and it's all those things. So it was an adventure that I was so grateful, because I believe that education is something no one can ever take away from you. But it was a slog.
And when it comes to your website, you're doing pretty, like I said, amazing things with lastnightsgame.com. But being an entrepreneur, man, break that a little bit down for the audience. What does it really take for someone like you to not just brand yourself in front of people and market yourself, but also hit those short-term and long-term goals?
I had one of those days. It's kind of, I think, wraps entrepreneurship up with a kind of a concise statement, is there are days that are just hard. You have, entrepreneurship is the highest highs and the lowest lows, just like sports, right? And just like life, really. That you're going, okay, am I doing enough? Did I do? And I need to do this. I need to do this. Let me dive into right now YouTube shorts. Am I doing those? How does that work? Let me add that into TikToks, Reels, everything else that you're doing in your content creating. And we're preparing. We really, because of the nature of sports, we can't really create a lot of content ahead of time. It really has to be done sort of in a timely fashion. And so the World Cup is coming up in November. And so for us, we really have to do the best we can to get ahead on creating content. And that is a lot. And so that in running the business and then running a family, and I'm also an adjunct professor in entrepreneurship. So trying to add all those in there, the biggest challenge I have and that we have is really stepping back and doing strategy. That is one of the biggest challenges we have, because it's really 1.5 of us. Scott works full-time elsewhere. And so we're always just hustling. And the thing about entrepreneurship that I think people tend to not really see is, especially with social media, you see people who are, oh, I'm an entrepreneur, but here I am on the beach working today and this and that. Yeah, sure, you can work from anywhere in a lot of cases, but you could do that in a regular job too nowadays. But what they don't see is the fact that your brain never turns off. You never take a moment off from what you're thinking. Your brain is always going, you should have done this. What about this? Let's do this. Let's do this. And so there's always that evolution of continuing to evolve yourself and your business. Otherwise, you're going to die as a business. And so it's a constant, you're always constantly on. And people joke in our household that someone said to my husband, doesn't she have any hobbies? And he said, yeah, she works. And so probably not the healthiest option. I'm trying to get better at that. But that is one of the biggest challenges, I think, and misconceptions about entrepreneurship is, and my other one is, I think, especially teaching college students, I have this big discussion that when people start businesses, not everyone's meant to be Facebook or Netflix. Those are all great businesses, but that is such an anomaly. There are so many phenomenal businesses out there, somewhere in the middle, right? We have great mom and pop shops in your neighborhood who are doing really well and creating economic development in your city. Then you have companies that are making a great amount of money and they have a couple thousand employees. They might have a couple hundred employees, but they're doing really well and they're making a decent amount of money, and they never need to be the company that goes public. They don't need to go to an IPO. They're not going to be Facebook. Not everyone's going to be a unicorn. Not everyone needs to be that. And so it's realizing that there's so much pressure to be like everybody else, especially with social media and seeing, Mark Zuckerberg always in the news and Jeff Bezos. But those are so few and far between. Like, find yourself a, what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of someone to set your sight on that's doing great things maybe in your business, but maybe also in an attainable way. And not everyone is meant to be an IPO, a company that IPOs. So I always think that is such a misconception that we're driven to accelerate to that level, but you can live a very comfortable, very wealthy life if you want, but it doesn't have to be to that capacity. So manage your expectations, but also drive your business accordingly. I'm not saying, set your bar low, but also know that you can be phenomenal without reaching some of those mile markers that people tend to put into place for it.
Yeah, I like what you said earlier about the beach statement, because I don't think people see what happens after they made that post.
Right, exactly. Or how long it took them to make that post. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, yeah, we all have our feed, but it's more like a highlight reel. So when it comes to the sports market, it is a very crowded space. What are some of the ways you try to keep yourself separated from other competition?
I think that's a great question. So when we started, we looked for someone covering sports in an easy to understand way. And I love ESPN and I love some of other publications out there that cover women only sports and those kinds of things, which are great. Everyone kind of has their niche, but we couldn't find someone that said, here's a 3-minute breakdown of what's happening in the world of sports in a human interest way. And so that was kind of why we created. We couldn't find it. And I still haven't seen someone who does it quite that way. And we do cover women's sports. We cover men's sports. We cover children's sports, unique sports, whatever it might be. But stuff to give you that conversation starter and things that are happening in the world. And so we continue to evolve. But we really stick to that line of, we have our sort of target market in mind, which is mostly women. And we have about 65% female followers, and the rest are men who, a lot of the guys are in sales and different industries where they need to be able to talk to people all the time. And so my whole goal is when we find a story, we say, okay, would so-and-so care about that? No, she doesn't care about that. So let's drop that story. Let's put this one in here, because this one of the mascot tackling the kid during the halftime football game, that is something that's notable versus, so-and-so had Aaron Judge's record-breaking home run record. We covered that, but you've got to put a spin on that makes it interesting. And so that is our constant goal to do that. And we keep everything short and sweet. The email blast should take you about 3 minutes to read, and the podcast is 5 minutes and under every week.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Okay. See, that's one thing I did not do.
It's a short and sweet. Yep.
Wow. So it's just once a week?
Once a week. And it's a 5-minute podcast. So we cover one big topic. Like this week, we'll get you prepped for the World Series. So that'll be exciting. And then, like I said, the World Cup coming up, we did one on NBA series, and we're just giving you little snippets that gives you something to kind of talk about, and obviously look for more. And we always have links for more in our content to be able to learn more. But here's a blip. Move on with your day. We all have enough going on. Here's your 5-minute podcast. Learn something and go forth and conquer.
That's actually smart because you're giving them everything except the fluff. You're getting to the point.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
a subscribe so I can be a smart sports
Thank you. Thank
listener
you.
because yeah, I think that's genius.
Well, it's brevity, right? At some point, we all have so much information and so many demands on our time, and that's actually how the podcast came about. I had some friends who were subscribers, but then had babies, or all of a sudden started new jobs, and they said, "I can't read in the morning. I love the content, but I don't have time to read. Could you do a podcast or something so I can learn about it?" And so that's essentially what we did. And because it's short, those people with short commutes can pick that up. It's easy to drop in to your rotation on a weekly basis. And if you're like me and listen to a podcast on 1.5 times, you're done and over with me in 2.5 minutes and out the door.
And you also have a lot of blog posts. I did check that out. You got some pretty cool articles on the website as well. Does that take a little bit of more time to dive into? Is that a little bit more lengthy than the episodes themselves?
The blog posts are also about 3 to 4 minute reads. Those are posted every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Excuse me, Mondays and Fridays. And that'll get you wrap up the weekend or get you ready for the weekend. And once again, short and sweet. And if I get my life together, they don't take an exorbitant amount of time to create. But I learn so much because Scott sends me over that information, and I'm the one who puts that into the formatting and really kind of tweaks it and writes it up. And it's we believe in short and sweet. We believe it's got to be entertaining because nobody wants to dive into something maybe they're a little uncomfortable with and wanting to learn if it's boring, right? I don't want to do something that's boring, but I learn something just about every single time I write one or I do the podcast because there's no way for any of us to know all of it, right? But it's so fun to be able to piece it together and then bring to life this concept or this great sport or this great athlete or whatever that might be, or traditions. College football traditions is one of my favorite podcasts because there are some weird things that colleges do and their fans do, and to me that is just hilarious. I mean, why wouldn't that be something that you could talk about and maybe give you a Halloween costume idea or something moving forward?
Exactly. Once again, man, listen, I'm Focus Radio talking to our guest, Amy Siegfried. And man, like I said in the beginning, you're not just an entrepreneur. You done TED Talk. I mean, I haven't got to that part. I want to real quick before we wrap this up. What was your experience like being able to be a TED Talk speaker? I feel like you get like the YouTube platform, like certificate, like award or something when you get something like that. That's a big deal.
It is a big deal, and I'll be honest, I didn't even have a chance to really even do a great job of prepping for it. Someone had approached me in the office space that I work out of and said, "Hey, we're doing this session. Would love for you to come up with a topic and speak." I'm like, "Okay." We had just moved back from Singapore probably a couple months before that, and so I don't even think at that point I really knew what TED Talks were, and so. I think I watched one and I was like, okay, I can't watch this. This is too intimidating. And so I just worked with the guy who asked me to speak and picked a topic, which was was it leveling the playing field with sports? And so I just pieced it together. And it's, what the thing about TED Talks that I really, really love is it's not some sort of competition. Everybody gets up there and talks about something completely random and that has probably nothing to do with what you're talking about. And so to me, that is great because it's a supportive group because you're not competing. Sure, you're all on the stage at the same time and you want the audience to like maybe you more than somebody else or like you the best or think you're amazing. But ultimately, this person's talking about, the migration of ducks or something, and you're talking about sports. And so it's a lot of fun. It's a little stressful though. I mean, it is nerve wracking. There's a really high bar set for those. So that was something that, as someone who's pretty confident and pretty comfortable in front of people, that was maybe a little bit of a knee knocker, like handshaking with the microphone type of thing.
And last, I don't want to miss this question either. You mentioned about being overseas at one point. What have you drawn from that experience that has helped you as a woman in business and being your own boss?
Gosh, my mom made fun of us. My husband and I sometimes say we picked it up really there. It is what it is. And there are some times where you've got to hustle a little bit harder. And sometimes things don't go your way and things are complicated. The road is bumpy, but it is what it is. If this is what you want, and that was sort of how we felt when we lived in Singapore, it was a whole new culture you had to learn. You had to learn how to put toll money on your toll card. I mean, those kinds of things that were not easy, but you had to figure it out. And so you got a toll road ticket. Well, is what it is. Pay it, move on. We lesson learned. And so I do think there's a facet of living there that really taught me to not get too hung up on failures and things like that. They're lessons learned. Let's fail forward. Let's keep going. And I believe that really has given me a chance to excel as an entrepreneur, because I can't take anything too seriously. Learn your lesson and move on. And failure is okay as long as you do something with it.
I'm talking to Amy Siegfried. You can go to her website right now. It's lastnightsgame.com. Once again, lastnightsgame.com. And I know I lied to you. I have one more question because I have a minute for you. When I mentioned about women in business, what are some of the things you try to keep an eye on in inspiring other women around you to take that leap of faith and being their own entrepreneur?
That's a great question. I really believe that you should just do it. There's no great time to launch a business. There's no great time to do some of these things in life, right? There was no great time to go back to school to get my MBA. Like that was not, I didn't know COVID was coming either, but we all know there's no great time to do these things. So jump in there, do it, because you're going to sit there and regret it. So what? It doesn't work. So what? It fails. So what? You start your business here and it pivots left. Great. Go with it. Learn, evolve. If anything, you're learning something new and you're challenging yourself. I have never, I had a long career before I started as an entrepreneur, and I always worked in my lane. I always had an accounting department, a legal department, a marketing department, all those things. When it's you are the accounting department, you are the legal department, you are the marketing department, you are also IT, which is not my skill set. But I think that's to me, that has evolved and made me learn so much and appreciate and respect those in my community who do that. And if I ever did go back to a corporate job, I mean, I teach now too. So I'm learning a lot of those, putting those things back into the environment of, I appreciate you hustling, doing what you do to make my job easier or make my job happen. And so I do think it's given me a huge respect for that. But as a woman, if you're looking to do something, dive in. There's so many resources out there for women in business, and I encourage you to look for them. There are grants, there are guides, there are everything you could think of, and ask for help, because it's such a lonely journey to start a business, to ask for help, to ask for support, because that is something that I don't think most women do well. But find your tribe, find the people who will support you, and ask for help when you need it. Ask for moral support when you need it, whatever that might be. Because it's worth it. It's tough, but it's worth it because I know you can do it. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I remember earlier you mentioned you going to the University of Notre Dame, but when it comes to teaching real fast, we'll make sure I got this right. Where again are you teaching as well?
I teach at Oklahoma State University.
Wow, man. I mean, I know you don't sleep. You get like 3 to 4 hours of sleep. So once again, people can go check out your website. It is lastnightsgame.com. That's lastnightsgame.com. You do everything. You're a TED Talk person, entrepreneur, your own boss, podcast host, about to get your MBA, doing big things, and also a sports fan and investor, and also inspiring women all around the world. I want to say thanks again for being on the show, I'm Focus Radio, and taking time out of your schedule.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure. Thanks.